Ready?
We're ready, yeah.
Okay. In 1992, the Stanford women's basketball team had just won their second national championship. Their point guard, Molly Goodenbauer, was selected as the most outstanding player of the tournament. The following year, Ann Cribbs, a co-owner of a very successful PR firm in the Bay Area, was watching the TV, and Chris Webber was on. Chris Webber had that year lost the national championship for Michigan when he called a timeout with only 11 seconds left, and they had no timeouts, resulting in a technical foul and a win for North Carolina. He was on TV complaining that Golden State Warriors, who were paying him millions and millions of dollars, were not paying him millions enough. Afterwards, Ann decided to take her daughter to go to Lady Foot Locker to pick up some socks. There, working behind the counter for minimum wage, was Molly Goodenbauer. Ann was sick to her stomach. This was one of the catalysts that started her on the path of founding the American Basketball League, of which I was the first employee, to make sure that women like Molly never again have to have a place to play after college. If you want to see what it looks like to truly have passion and love for sports, a love that the men seem to have replaced with arrogance and a sense of entitlement, look to the women. Women like Olympic and college champion softball star Caitlin Lowe, who, going for a fly ball, crashed into a fence, shattering her nose and covering her face with blood. Her teammates literally had to hide her glove to keep her from running back on the field. This was not a championship game. This was not a playoff game. It was just a game. That's what love and passion looks like. In many ways, women's athletics have come a long way, especially since 1972, when President Nixon signed Title IX into law, which stated that any publicly funded school must give an equal amount of resources to women's athletics as they do for men. The increase in girls and women in sports has been amazing since then, with them comprising 44% of all organized sports members, as detailed in the 2002 Sports Participation in America report. However, according to the 2003-2004 National Center for Education Statistics report, while girls comprise 49% of high school population, they only receive 41% of the athletic opportunities. The 2005-06 National Federation of State High School Associations report tells us that girls receive 1.25 million fewer athletic opportunities than the boys. Apparently, we still have far to go. Female athletes still have the stigma of being the weaker cousin to male athletes, even though Army research shows, as detailed in the January 30th, 1996 issue of Morning Call, that 78% of women tested could lift, carry, and march, as well as the men, after just 90 days of intensive training. Women's sports is also still thought of to be uninteresting and even boring, a belief that showed itself on the surveys I presented to the class. How anyone who saw Carrie Strug's courageous performance at the '96 Olympics, Brandi Chastain's epic goal to win the '99 Women's World Cup, or anything Candace Parker has ever done on the basketball court can say it's boring is beyond me. Here's another example of the so-called weaker sex in action. The NBA was in existence 28 years before it recorded its first quadruple double in 1974. That's where a player gets double digits in 4 out of 5 categories like points, rebounds, assists, etc. It took less than 2 months for Debbie Black to record the first quadruple double for professional women's basketball on December 18, 1996. Not to mention the first tennis player to win a Golden Slam, where you win the 4 major tennis titles as well as an Olympic gold medal, was Steffi Graf in the 87-88 season. So why are they still held in such low regard by the majority of our society? One of the main problems is media coverage. The Women's Sports Foundation, in a study of Sports Illustrated between the years of 1997 and 2007, learned that 34, or only 7%, of the 508 issues published featured women on the cover. Of those 34, 5 simply showed women in a group. 1 was the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. 10 covers, swimsuits. Only 18 women were featured for their athletic achievements. 18 covers out of 504. During a 30-day analysis of ESPN's Sports Center for the National Conference of the Association for Education and Journalism and Mass Communication in 2002, the ratio of men's stories to women's stories was more than 48-1, with stories featuring only women, no stories featuring only women airing in the first 2 segments of the show. In fact, in the 2006 study conducted by Michael Allen Mesner and other members of USC's Sociology and Gender Studies program titled "This Revolution is Not Being Televised," he showed that SportsCenter only had 2% of its airtime for women's sports, and Fox Sports Southern California Sports Report devoted only 3% of airtime to women. In the November 25th, 2002 issue of ESPN the Magazine, the 2003 College Hoops Preview article covered the top 65 men's teams, while only 8 women's teams received a mention. I honestly believe that with better coverage, the word will get out about these amazing athletes. The coverage of women's tennis stories accounted for 42.4% of all women's sports stories, according to Margaret C. Duncan, PhD, and Michael Mesner, in their July 25th study, 2005 study titled "Gender in Televised Sports, News and Highlight Shows 89 to 2004. I do not find it surprising then that when I asked the class to name a female professional athlete, the vast majority named one or both of the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena. If you promote it, they will come. This was also shown in the June 6, 2005 issue of Time magazine, where Danica Patrick was credited with being the reason for the 40% leap in the Nielsen ratings for the Indy 500 that year. In fact, the few sports where women seem to outperform men, they have no problem getting coverage. Sports like figure skating and gymnastics, where you are more likely to recognize Michelle Kwan and Shawn Johnson than Evan Lysacek or Paul Hamm. And once people know they exist and start coming to the games, they tend to stick around. When I first started working at the ABL, all my guy friends pretty much said, "Wouldn't it be cool if Eric worked for a real sport?" I eventually convinced each of them to come to a game. Within a year, they all had season tickets and were joining me at other women's sporting events, both live and on TV. Sure, they still followed the 49ers and the Lakers and the Giants, but they only ever spent money on the women's, the so-called not a real sport. They were not the only men who became rabid women's fans. The July 1999 issue of Street and Smith Sports Business Journal told us that 49% of the 90,185 attendees at the final game of the 1999 Women's World Cup were men, compared to 36% women and 15% children. However, television viewership for the game crossed all gender lines with its 40 million viewers, making it the most watched soccer game in U.S. television history, as told by Barry Wilner in the July 12, 1999 AP article, "U.S. Women Team Leaves Lasting Image." When women are promoted, people pay attention. The 2001 Venus Williams-Serena Williams U.S. Open final outdrew that year's Notre Dame, Nebraska football game on TV. Finally, in the April 19, 2004 Go Figure section of Sports Illustrated, it stated that the 2004 UConn-Tennessee Women's College Basketball Championship game was the most watched basketball game in the history of ESPN. They built it, and they came. What are some of the benefits this has for you? Well, for one thing, women's sporting events are cheaper than their male counterparts. For instance, the October 17, 2010 article titled "Women's Olympic Events Cost Less to See" by Rachel Shields from Britain's The Independent newspaper said that the ticket prices for the upcoming 2012 Olympics show such a difference in price that some women's events are being sold for less than half of the tickets for the comparable men's games. The April 2010 study titled "Ticket Office Sexism, the Gender Gap in Pricing for NCAA Division I Basketball" by Laura Papano and Allison Tracy, PhD, for Wellesley College, showed that among the top 25 men's and women's teams, colleges charge nearly 3 times as much for single game seats for men's games. The difference was even greater for season tickets, where the average price was $233 for women and $2,500 for the men. Quite a lot of coins saved for us women's fans. But the greatest benefit in supporting women's athletics is for the women themselves. A 2007 NCAA report stated that of those students attending NCAA Division I schools, female athletes posted the highest graduation rates, followed by female students in general, male students, and finally, male athletes. Research from sources like the Journal of Genetic Psychology, the Women's Sports Foundation, the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, and the President's Council on Physical Fitness all tell us the same thing. Women who participate in sports have a more positive body image. They have fewer eating disorders, are less likely to use illegal drugs, less likely to be suicidal, less likely to smoke, and across the board have higher self-esteem than their non-athletic counterparts. They're more likely to be engaged in volunteering, be registered to vote, feel comfortable making public statements, and follow the news than women who don't. I could go on and on citing the benefits of women and their sources, but I have a limited amount of time. So what can you do to help? Well, the simplest and most enjoyable thing would be go to a game. Be it basketball, softball, track and field, whatever your sport you enjoy. Catch some women giving you their all for you. If you want to get more involved, write to your local paper or magazine like Sports Illustrated and ESPN the magazine, and television stations, demanding they give more coverage to female athletes, or at least female athletes when they're not wearing a bikini. But the best thing you can do, the most important thing you can do, is give encouragement. Encourage the little girl you see with a batting helmet 3 sizes too big for her head. Congratulate your friend who just perfected her backhand. Support your mom who's trying to take up jogging or yoga. Knowing we care, we appreciate the sacrifices they make for their passion, and we love what they do can do wonders. Something as simple as a little pat on the back and a that a girl can do more to help than we could possibly imagine. Hopefully I've helped to open your eyes to the joys of women's sports. We can see the successes they have had and the great distances they still have to go. I hope I've also been able to convey to you how amazing these women are. You only have to look in their eyes to see the love and the passion these women have for the game they play. A love and a passion which, frankly, the men seem to have lost. We've seen in our very own class an example of how sports better the lives of women in our classmate Carolina, who in her introductory speech told us how much playing soccer has improved her life, both mentally and physically. What better example do we need than her? All they want to do is play, to compete, to do what they love. These women don't play because they want to or even because they can, but because they have to. It is who they are. And the best part is they carry those emotions and all those thrills and excitement up to the stands to the people watching them, making you feel part of the game, part of their lives. You find yourself caring for these women, and as individuals that they are, not just rooting for whatever shirt you happen to call your team, regardless of what group of guys happens to be wearing it this season. You can be part of this world, either as a participant or a fan. Come to a game and learn what it is to be truly passionate about sports, and help me in creating a world where people like Molly Goodenbauer can continue playing the game they love instead of selling socks. Thank you for your time.